The Hook, the alien city, hung in the sky like a silver crown above Earth. Its towers were sharp and cold, covered in glowing lines of blue energy. The people below could only stare up, knowing it was the home of the Cavell sisters, 3 alien princesses who ruled from above. They were tall, with silver hair that flowed like liquid light. Their eyes shone like frozen stars, and their hearts were colder still. To them, humans were nothing but tools. Some were taken as workers, others as entertainment. They called humans weak, soft, and slow. No human ever dared to look into their eyes and speak with defiance. Until today, in the Grand Throne Hall, hundreds of alien guards stood at attention. The floor was made of glass that glowed beneath every step. The air smelled faintly of burning metal. At the far end, on 3 raised thrones, sat the Cavell sisters. The eldest, Vera, wore armor of black crystal. The middle sister, Sariel, had a gown that shimmered with 1,000 colors. The youngest, Lyra, was dressed in white silk. Her face was beautiful and cruel. She was the one who hated humans most of all. A human prisoner was brought forward by 2 guards. He was tall for his kind, his hair dark, his eyes sharp. His name was Ethan. He walked without fear, his hands bound by glowing chains. Lyra tilted her head and smirked. "So this is the one who dared to break our laws," she said, her voice dripping with amusement. "He will beg soon enough," Sariel added. Not even looking at him, Ethan stopped at the base of the steps and looked up at them. He did not bow. He did not kneel. The hall grew quiet. Lyra rose from her throne and walked down toward him. Her heels clicked softly on the glowing floor. She was taller than Ethan by a head. She circled him like a predator. "You are brave," she said, her tone mocking, "or very, very stupid." Ethan kept his gaze on her. "I'm neither," he replied calmly. "I'm only here to tell you that your time is running out." The sisters laughed, their voices echoing through the hall. Lyra leaned in close to his ear. "And why would a ground rat like you think you can threaten us?" Ethan's lips curled into the smallest of smiles. "Because I've seen what's coming," he said, "and you're not ready." For a moment, Lyra's smile faltered. The air in the room seemed colder. Vera frowned from her throne. "What nonsense is this?" she demanded. "You think you know the future?" Ethan's eyes flicked between them. "I don't think," he said quietly. "I know." He took a slow breath. "In less than a day, something will tear through this city. It won't care about your shields or your weapons, and it won't stop until nothing is left." The guards tensed, unsure if they should laugh or strike him. Lyra crossed her arms. "You expect us to believe that?" "I don't care if you believe it," Ethan answered. "I came here to give you a choice." Sariel leaned forward, her voice sharp. "And what choice is that, human?" Ethan looked her in the eye. "Listen to me and maybe survive," he said, "or ignore me and watch your people die." Silence fell over the hall. Then Lyra burst into laughter again. "You are entertaining," she said, turning away. "Perhaps I will keep you as a pet." Before Ethan could respond, the floor trembled. The lights above flickered. A low, deep sound rolled through the air, like distant thunder. The alien guards looked around. Uneasy, the sisters froze. The sound grew louder, closer. The crystal walls of the throne room began to hum. Ethan slowly raised his head toward the ceiling. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "It begins," he said. The hum turned into a sharp, vibrating howl. The glass floor rippled as if it were liquid. Somewhere far above, an explosion echoed through the city. The sisters exchanged quick, tense glances. Vera barked orders to the guards. Lyra's eyes were fixed on Ethan. He was still standing there, chains glowing around his wrists, not afraid, not even surprised. Outside the throne room, alarms began to wail. The city shook again. Harder this time. From the balcony, a guard shouted in panic, "There's something out there." The sisters turned. Through the massive glass wall behind their thrones, a shadow moved in the darkness of space, huge, slow, and shaped like nothing they had ever seen before. Ethan's voice broke the silence. You've made too many enemies. He said, now one of them has come to collect. The alien princesses stood frozen for the first time in their lives. Lyra felt a strange chill at the back of her neck. She didn't know why, but deep inside, she understood one thing. This human was not lying. The first challenge, the throne room was no longer silent. Alien guards rushed to the windows, their armor clanging as they moved. The deep howl outside was still growing, like some living thing circling its prey. Ethan stood where he was, chains glowing on his wrists, his eyes locked on the shadow drifting beyond the glass. Vera, the eldest sister, raised her voice over the noise. Shields up. Full battle protocol. Her words carried authority, and the guards obeyed instantly. But even as they moved, the lights flickered again. The air felt heavier, like the city itself was sinking. Lyra stepped forward, her silver hair catching the glow of the emergency lights. Her eyes stayed on Ethan. What is that thing? She demanded, her tone sharp but with an edge of unease. Ethan's reply was calm. Something you've never fought before, and if you think your weapons will save you, you're already dead. Serial's voice cut through the tension. This is ridiculous, she said. No human could know more than us about threats in our own space. Ethan turned his gaze to her. You have walls, weapons, and pride. But pride doesn't stop predators. Before Serial could answer, a booming sound rippled through the city. The glass walls shook, and for the first time in decades, the alien capital went dark. The glowing floor faded to black. Only the faint blue emergency strips along the walls gave light. A strange hum replaced the normal engine thrum beneath their feet. The guards hesitated, looking to the sisters for orders. Vera's voice was firm. Emergency power to the core now. But no response came from the comms, only static. Something was cutting through their systems, not just attacking, disabling. Ethan stepped forward despite the guards around him. Your city runs on linked cores. The shadow out there knows how to break them. Lyra's eyes narrowed. How do you know that? Ethan gave a thin smile. Because my people faced them once, and we survived. A heavy silence fell, broken only by the distant sound of metal tearing somewhere deep. Within the city, Serial crossed her arms. You expect us to trust a human prisoner? You don't have to trust me, Ethan replied. But you should trust your fear. The eldest sister frowned. Enough, Vera said sharply. Take him to the lower cells until we have control again. Two guards stepped forward, but before they could move Ethan, a new sound echoed, a deep, rhythmic pounding, like something was knocking against the outer walls of the city. One of the guards at the balcony shouted, It's moving closer. It's scanning us. The word scanning made even the seasoned warriors exchange uneasy looks. Alien technology was advanced, but scanning an entire city through shields was impossible. At least it used to be. Ethan broke the tense silence. You have a few hours at most. If you keep me locked up, you'll waste them. Lyra looked at her sisters. Her pride told her to ignore him, but a small, stubborn whisper in her mind said he might be right. The pounding outside stopped suddenly. The shadow slid away into the darkness of space. It left no trace, no signal. The city hung quiet, save for the hum of failing systems. Vera's voice was low. It's gone. Ethan shook his head. No, it's testing you. It always tests first. Serial glared at him. And what exactly do you suggest we do? Ethan took a slow breath. First, free me. Second, take me to your control center. Third, prepare for something you've never seen. Lyra's eyes locked on his. Searching for a crack in his confidence, she found none, even bound and surrounded by armed guards. He stood like someone who had already planned 3 steps ahead, against her better judgment. She turned to Vera. Keeping him chained might cost us more than letting him walk. Vera's jaw tightened. She didn't like the idea. But the city's lights were still flickering, the comms still dead, and somewhere out there, a predator had just learned everything about them. Fine, Vera said at last. Release him, but keep a guard at his back. The guards hesitated, then tapped the glowing cuffs. The chains dissolved into the air. Ethan rubbed his wrists, the faint burn marks fading quickly. Wise choice, he said simply. Lyra stepped closer, her voice a low warning. If you try anything, human, I will end you myself. Ethan glanced at her with a half smile. If I try anything, it'll be to save your life. They moved through the dim corridors of the alien city. Emergency lights cast long shadows on the glass and crystal walls. From somewhere far below, a metallic groan echoed. Ethan walked in silence, memorizing every turn, every door. The guards stayed tense, weapons ready. Lyra kept pace beside him, stealing quick glances at his expression. He didn't look afraid. He looked like someone waiting for a storm he had seen before. When they reached the control center, the doors slid open with a sluggish hiss. Inside, dozens of consoles blinked weakly. Alien officers moved quickly, their voices tight. Holograms flickered in and out. One officer looked up at Lyra and shook his head. We've lost 3 outer shield rings. Something is draining them, not destroying. Draining. Ethan stepped forward. That's what it does first. It takes your energy, then it takes you. The room went silent. Lyra turned to him. And if we let you lead, human? Ethan's gaze swept the room, then returned to her. No, he said plainly. But I can make it chase something else, and that might give us enough time to survive. Lyra didn't like that answer, but deep inside, she knew time was already slipping away. Unwanted alliance. The control center was tense. The hum of failing systems filled the air like a steady heartbeat. Every console flickered with unstable power. Alien officers spoke in quick bursts, their voices low. They were not used to fear, but tonight, fear was everywhere. Lyra stood at the center, silver hair catching the weak glow of the emergency lights. She wanted to order the guards to throw Ethan back in chains. She wanted to pretend he was just a human fool, but she couldn't. Not after the way he had spoken in the throne room. Not after the shadow had appeared exactly as he said it would. Ethan moved toward the largest display, ignoring the wary eyes. Around him, the holographic projection of the city's orbit showed empty space. No ships, no enemy signals, but he shook his head slowly. It's still out there, he said. You just can't see it with your scanners. One of the alien technicians turned sharply. Our scanners can detect a cloaked fleet 2 systems away. If it's out there, we would see it. Ethan didn't even look at him. Not this one. You're thinking like you're the hunter. But right now, you're the prey. Vera's voice came from behind. Sharp as ever. We are never prey, she said. But even she could hear the small doubt in her own words. Ethan zoomed the map outward with a few quick motions. You're looking too close. It's not waiting right next to you. It's pacing. In the dark, it will circle until you're tired. Then it will strike. Lyra stepped closer, her eyes narrowed. If you know so much about it, then tell us what it is. Ethan glanced at her. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me, she said. Her voice carried a mix of challenge and something else. Curiosity. He studied her for a moment before speaking. They're not an empire. They're not raiders. They're not even a single species. They're something older. They're collectors. The word hung in the air like a shadow. Serial crossed her arms. Collectors of what? Ethan's answer was quiet. Life. He tapped the map again. They strip cities, worlds, even ships, not for resources, but for specimens. One of the alien officers scoffed. Fairy tales for children. But no one laughed. Because the room was still cold with the memory of that shadow outside. Lyra's jaw tightened. She hated the feeling building in her chest. The one that whispered Ethan might be telling the truth. She looked to Vera. Her eldest sister's face was unreadable. But the fact that Vera wasn't dismissing him outright told Lyra everything. The city's systems flickered again. An officer's voice broke through the tension, picking up movement at the edge of our long-range scans. It's faint, but it's not a natural signature. Everyone turned to the projection. Tiny blips moved slowly in the black, not coming closer, just circling. Ethan stepped forward. "That's them," he said. "They're measuring you, testing you. If you send ships after them now, they'll vanish. If you do nothing, they'll move in." Lyra felt the heat of her own pride boiling. She wanted to order an attack. She wanted to prove him wrong. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't sure she could win. Vera broke the silence. "What do you need, human?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "A direct link to your command systems, access to your fleet control, and no one questioning me until this is over." The room erupted with voices. Officers objected. Serial scoffed. Even Lyra's eyes widened. "You're asking for control of our fleet," she said. "No," Ethan corrected. "I'm asking for control of your survival." The pounding of footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Another officer ran in, breathless. "They're gone from the scans again, but we're detecting something inside the shield perimeter." Every head turned toward the great glass wall at the side of the control center. At first, it was empty space. Then, something shifted. A ripple in the darkness, like space itself, was bending. The ripple grew larger. Slowly, a shape began to emerge. It wasn't a ship in the way the Cavo knew ships. It was organic. Its surface moved like living skin. Its color impossible to pin down, and it was watching them. Gasps filled the control center. Weapons were drawn. Lyra's heartbeat pounded in her ears. Ethan only said one word: "See?" The creature ship pulsed once, and every light in the city went black. The hum of the engines died. The control center was silent except for the sound of people breathing. In the dark, Ethan's voice came again, calm as before. "Now you either let me help, or you find out what being collected feels like." The first attack. The city hung in darkness. Every tower, every bridge, every glowing streetlight was dead. Even the stars beyond the glass walls seemed dimmer. For the first time in centuries, the great alien capital was silent. The alien officers in the control center moved quickly, switching to backup power, but the console stayed dark. No energy, no shields, no weapons. They were blind, and something was moving outside. Lyra stood frozen, staring at the massive organic shape just beyond the shield perimeter. It didn't look like a ship. It looked alive. Its surface shifted in slow waves like muscle beneath skin. Thin lines of pale light moved across it, almost like veins pulsing with energy. The longer she stared, the more she felt it was staring back. Ethan's voice broke the silence. "It's inside your defenses already." Vera's head snapped toward him. "How?" "The perimeter is sealed." Ethan shook his head slowly. "You're thinking like it's breaking in. It's not, it's growing in." Before anyone could speak, a low vibration rolled through the city. It was deep and steady, almost like a heartbeat. The floor shivered under their feet. A faint crack appeared in the glass wall, not from impact, but from stress. Something in the city's structure was being pulled apart from the inside. An officer shouted, "Movement detected. Sector 9, Sector 12, Sector 3, it's everywhere." Lyra turned sharply. "What is it doing?" Ethan's reply came without hesitation. "Feeding." Alarms finally flickered to life. Dim red lights bathing the room. The screens jumped on for only seconds at a time before going dark again. Every time they came on, they showed something worse. Long, thin tendrils creeping through the city's corridors, not breaking walls, but slipping through vents, power lines, and even light fixtures. They moved with smooth, fluid speed. They didn't seem mechanical, and yet they weren't entirely alive. Serial took a step back from the nearest wall. Her voice was tight. "Those things, they're inside our systems." Ethan nodded. "They don't just drain your power. They become part of it. Once they're in, you can't tell where your city ends and they begin." Outside, the great shadow shifted again. It wasn't alone anymore. 3 smaller shapes had appeared beside it. They pulsed in rhythm with the larger one, like pieces of a single creature. Each one began to split open slowly. From the openings, hundreds of bright specks shot forward, At first they looked like drones, but as they came closer, Lyra saw they moved like insects. They had wings, but also thin, twitching limbs. Their eyes glowed faint yellow, and their bodies were covered in fine, silver threads. "They're breachers," Ethan said, his tone grim. "They find every weak spot, every opening, and when they land, they melt into whatever they touch." The first wave hit the outer towers. There was no explosion, no fire. Instead, the walls where they landed began to dissolve, like acid spreading through glass. The towers groaned under their own weight. One tilted slightly, chunks of crystal falling into the void below. Vera barked an order. "All batteries open fire." The command went nowhere. The weapons were offline. The crews couldn't even access manual control. Ethan stepped forward. "You can't shoot what's already inside you." He pointed toward the city's core projection. "Your only chance is to cut power to everything. Starve them out. But it will make you completely defenseless." Lyra's eyes burned with frustration. "That's your plan? Let them walk in while we sit in the dark?" Ethan met her gaze. "No, that's step one." Before he could explain further, the control center shook violently. Everyone grabbed onto rails and consoles as the floor heaved. Through the glass wall, Lyra saw one of the outer towers snap in half. It fell slowly, silently, pieces breaking away as it vanished into the black void. The organic ship outside pulsed brighter, its surface shifted faster, almost eager. The hundreds of insect-like breachers began pouring toward the inner ring of the city, and behind them, the long tendrils from earlier began to follow. They didn't rush, they didn't have to. Ethan turned to Vera, his voice sharp now. "If you're going to listen to me, it's now or never." Vera hesitated for only a second, then gave the order. "All non-essential systems, cut power immediately." The lights flickered. Then the city dropped into near-total darkness. Only the faint glow of the alien sisters' eyes lit the space around them. The hum of the engine stopped completely. It was so quiet that Lyra could hear her own heartbeat. Outside, the breachers slowed. Their movements became less fluid, less coordinated, but they didn't stop. They began attaching themselves to the city's dark surfaces, like seeds waiting to grow. Ethan studied them carefully. "They're waiting for you to turn the lights back on," he said. "And when you do, they'll finish what they started." Lyra stepped closer to him. "So what's step two?" Ethan's gaze shifted toward the stars. "We lure them somewhere else. Somewhere they think is more valuable than this city." He looked back at her. "But that will require bait. And the bait has to survive just long enough to lead them away." Lyra didn't like the sound of that. But before she could answer, the floor shuddered again. This time it wasn't the slow vibration from before. It was heavier, closer. Something was moving through the city itself. Ethan turned toward the sound. "They're here," he said. "Not outside anymore, inside, the truth." The sound came again, a slow, dragging weight moving somewhere deep inside the city. It was not the sound of machines. It was heavier, more alive. It made the floor tremble with each movement. Lyra's eyes scanned the dark control center. The red emergency glow painted sharp shadows across the walls. Every officer was tense, weapons drawn but useless. They had seen the breachers melt through outer walls. They knew the same could happen here. Ethan's voice broke the silence. "They've stopped playing with you," he said. "They're coming for the heart of the city." Vera turned sharply. "And how do you know that?" Ethan didn't look at her. "Because that's what they always do. They watch your core, your energy, your people." "In that order," Serial frowned. "You speak as if you've seen this before." Ethan finally turned to face them. "I have," he said. His voice was calm, but something cold hid behind it. "My ancestors fought them, and most of them didn't live to tell the story." Lyra stepped closer. "You mean humans have faced these things before?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Yes, but not like this. Back then, they were smaller. We called them the Vrokon." The name hung in the air. It felt strange, heavy. Even the alien officers seemed uneasy repeating it under their breath. Ethan walked toward the holographic table. The display flickered, barely alive. He used quick gestures to pull up an old star chart. It wasn't from caval archives, it was human. The map showed dozens of systems, some marked in green, most in red. The red ones were scattered like blood across the stars. This, Ethan said, pointing at the red marks, was the Vrokhan's hunting ground. They came without warning. They didn't talk, they didn't negotiate, they just took. Serial crossed her arms. And what stopped them? Ethan's gaze stayed on the map. Not strength, not weapons, brains. He turned to face them fully. Humans learned the hard way. You can't destroy them in a straight fight. Every weapon you have, they learn to resist. Every defense you build, they find a way through. The only way to survive is to outsmart them. Lyra's voice was sharp. And you think you can outsmart them now? Ethan gave a small shrug. I know their patterns. I know their hunger. And I know they're not perfect. Outside the glass wall, a faint pulse of yellow light moved across the darkness. It was slow, steady like breathing. Lyra's eyes narrowed. They're waiting, she murmured. Ethan nodded. Yes, because they know you'll make a mistake. You'll try to fight them like an enemy fleet. And the moment you do, you'll give them what they want. Vera stepped forward, her voice firm. What exactly do they want? Ethan met her gaze. You, your knowledge, your biology, your entire species in a jar. The control center went silent. Even the faint hum of failing systems seemed to fade. Lyra's voice was low when she spoke. And what happens to the worlds they collect? Ethan didn't blink. They disappear. No one ever sees them again, not even wreckage. Serial's tone was skeptical, but her eyes betrayed unease. You expect us to believe they can take entire cities without a trace? Ethan's reply was simple. Believe what you want. In 3 hours, you'll see it for yourself. The dragging sound came again, closer this time. It was moving through the city's lower levels. One of the officers checked the sensors. They're heading toward the primary energy conduit. Ethan's head tilted slightly. Of course they are. That's the main artery. Once they reach it, they'll feed until they're strong enough to tear your city apart. Lyra stepped toward him, her voice tight. Then tell us your plan. Ethan studied her for a long moment. You won't like it. Tell me anyway, she pressed. He leaned over the table and drew a path on the map. We give them something they can't resist. Something brighter, richer, and easier to take than your city. Vera frowned. You mean another target? Ethan nodded. Yes, but we make sure it's a trap. Serial scoffed. And what would we use as bait? Ethan's eyes met Lyra's. Me, he said. Her brow furrowed. You? Yes, they've tasted your power, but they've never tasted mine. The idea made no sense to her. But something about the way he said it told her there was more. He wasn't saying, what aren't you telling us, human? Ethan's eyes darkened slightly. My people never defeated the Vrokhan, but we made them afraid of us, because there's something in human minds they can't consume, something they can't control. Before Lyra could ask what he meant, the floor shook violently. This time, it wasn't distant. The sound was coming from the corridor outside. The wall nearest the door began to ripple, like the surface of water touched by a slow wind. The officers backed away, weapons raised. A faint yellow glow spread through the rippling wall. Then a single thin tendril slid through the crystal. It moved like a living thing, searching, tasting the air. Ethan stepped forward. Don't touch it, he said sharply. They're not attacking yet. They're learning. The tendril twisted toward him. It stopped just inches from his face, and for a moment, Lyra could have sworn it hesitated. Then it pulled back slowly, vanishing into the wall as silently as it had come. Ethan turned to them. Now you understand why you can't fight them the way you fight others. They're not here for war. They're here for you. Asterisk the turning point. The tendril was gone, but its presence lingered in the air like a foul taste. No one in the control center spoke for several seconds. Even the hum of the emergency systems felt quieter, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Lyra was the first to move. Her eyes shifted to Vera. Her eldest sister stood tall, but Lyra could see the strain behind her calm face. Sariel looked tense too, her usual smirk gone, replaced with something closer to doubt. Then the cum crackled. A voice came through, sharp and panicked. "This is Sector 12. We've lost the entire east wall. The material is dissolving. We can't stop it." The signal broke into static. A second later, the holographic map flashed red in 3 new areas. Vera clenched her jaw. "They're spreading faster than expected." Ethan stepped closer. "They've already mapped your entire city. Now they're just choosing the easiest path to your core." Sariel's voice was low. "If they reach it, it's over." Ethan nodded once. "Over in a way you can't imagine." Lyra looked at him hard. "You said your plan could stop them. I'm listening." Ethan met her gaze. "We take they fight away from here. Draw them to the edge of the system. Make them follow something they believe is worth more than this city." Vera's tone was sharp. "And what is worth more to them than an entire city?" Ethan's answer came without hesitation. "A living target that they think is unguarded. Something that shines like nothing else they've ever seen." The map flickered again. Ethan highlighted a location. A dead mining station at the far edge of the system. The Cavel had abandoned it decades ago. It still had a working reactor but nothing else. "We make them believe the station is your real prize, your real heart," he said. "And when they take the bait, we burn them." Sariel frowned. "And how exactly do you plan to burn something that eats energy?" Ethan gave a faint smile. "By giving them more energy than they can swallow." Vera's eyes narrowed. "You mean an overload?" "Yes," Ethan said. "But not just any overload. We rigged the station's reactor to release a burst tuned to the frequency their bodies use to store what they steal. It will collapse their internal systems before they can adapt." The room went silent again. It was a good plan, but it required one thing none of them liked. Someone had to be there to activate it at the last moment, to make sure the Vrakhan stayed close enough for it to work. Ethan looked at Lyra. "I told you before. That someone is me." She frowned. "You're asking to go alone into a trap you can't escape from." Ethan's voice stayed steady. "I've escaped worse." Vera stepped between them. "This is reckless. We don't even know if his theory will work." Ethan's eyes stayed locked on Lyra. "You don't have time for another theory." The floor beneath them rumbled. This time, it wasn't the distant, slow movement they'd heard before. It was sharp, violent. An explosion of yellow light lit up the holographic map. Another tower was gone. Pieces of it were drifting past the outer windows, some still alive with crawling, pulsing threads. Lyra's chest tightened. The city was breaking apart, and her sisters were looking to her now. Not Vera, not Sariel, her. She hated the idea of trusting a human. She hated even more that he might be their only hope. But the truth was clear. Without a risk, there would be no survival. She stepped forward. Her voice was firm. "Ethan will take a ship to the mining station." The officers in the room stared at her in disbelief. Vera's eyes widened. "Lyra, no," Lyra cut in. "This is my decision. We follow his plan, or we die here." Sariel's voice was sharp. "You can't just." "I can," Lyra said. Her tone left no room for argument. Ethan gave a small nod. "Good. Then we move now." He turned to the officers. "I need a fast scout ship, minimal weapons, max engines, and enough reactor output to make the bait look real." One of the officers hesitated. "That will take time." Ethan's gaze hardened. "You have 20 minutes." Lyra turned to her sisters. "Vera, take command of the defenses. Sariel, coordinate evacuation for the lower rings. We don't know how much time we'll gain, but we'll use every second of it." As the orders spread, the control center came alive with movement. Officers hurried to their stations. Runners moved between rooms. The sound of the city preparing for something it had never faced before filled the air. Ethan leaned closer to Lyra. "You know they'll follow me," he said. Lyra's eyes stayed on him. "And if they don't?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Then you'll have to think faster than me." A deep vibration rolled through the floor again. The Vraken were still moving, still coming. But now, for the first time, there was a plan to meet them. Lyra wasn't sure if it would work. She wasn't sure if Ethan would come back. But she was sure of one thing. This was the moment everything changed. Fate changed. The scout ship was small, barely big enough for two people. Its silver hull carried no markings. Its weapons were stripped, replaced with a glowing reactor core that pulsed brighter than any engine should. It was bait, and Ethan was the hook. Lyra stood on the launch platform. The hangar lights flickered above her, beyond the transparent barrier. The black of space waited. The city trembled again, another tower falling silently into the void. The Vraken were still advancing, their tendrils crawling deeper into the city's core. Ethan stepped into the cockpit. He glanced back once, meeting Lyra's eyes. "You keep your city standing," he said. "I'll keep their eyes on me." Lyra's jaw tightened. "And if you don't come back?" He gave a half smile. "Then make sure you win anyway." The ship's engines hummed to life. The hangar doors slid open. In a burst of light, the bait was away. Lyra watched it disappear into the black. Her chest felt heavier than she wanted to admit. In the control center, Vera's voice filled the comms. "Tracking him, the Vraken are changing course." On the holographic map, the pulsing red shapes shifted, one by one. They turned from the city and began moving toward the scout ship. The largest shadow, the one that had first appeared, pulsed brighter. It was following. It was hunting. Ethan pushed the ship's engines harder. The mining station appeared ahead, a dark, skeletal frame against the stars. Its reactor was already active, glowing like a beacon. He skimmed low over its outer ring, weaving between broken struts and drifting debris. Behind him, the Vraken fleet closed in, not firing, not rushing, just moving, certain their prey had nowhere to run. Inside the city, Lyra stood beside Vera at the command table. "Time until they reach the station?" she asked. 3 minutes, Vera replied. The officers around them moved fast. The overload signal was ready, but it would only work if the Vraken were close enough. On the edge of the system, Ethan slowed. The ship drifted toward the station's core. The shadows behind him spread out, surrounding the station in a loose ring. The massive central shape moved closer. Its surface rippled like water in a storm. Dozens of tendrils extended toward the station. They were ready to feed. Ethan opened the comm to the city. "They're in position," he said. Lyra's voice came back, steady. "Overload armed on your signal." He looked at the reactor controls. The countdown in his head began. The Vraken were almost touching the station now. The air, even in space, seemed to vibrate. Inside the largest shape, faint yellow lights flared like eyes. The tendrils reached forward, brushing the station's frame. The metal hissed. The glow of the reactor began to fade as they drank its power. Ethan's hands moved over the controls. He forced the reactor into a feedback loop. The energy spiked. The glow turned from white to blinding blue. "They're hooked," he said into the comm. "Do it now." In the control center, Lyra gave the order, "Detonate." The mining station erupted, not in a fireball, but in a silent wave of light. It spread in all directions. It passed through the Vraken ships like a ripple through water. For a heartbeat, they seemed untouched. Then the light inside them shifted. The pale veins running across their bodies flared violently. One by one, they convulsed, their shapes twisting. The tendrils recoiled. The yellow eyes dimmed. The largest shape shuddered. Its surface peeled away in strips. Chunks of it drifted apart, dissolving into nothing. The smaller ones followed, within seconds. The entire fleet was gone. No wreckage, no signal, just empty space. In the control center, cheers erupted. Officers shouted in disbelief. Vera allowed herself a single smile. Sariel exhaled slowly, but Lyra's eyes were fixed on the empty spot where the mining station had been. The comm was silent, too silent. "Ethan," she said. No reply. "Ethan, respond." Nothing. Her hand tightened on the edge of the table. Then the cum crackled. "Next time," his voice came. Faint but steady. "Try to give me a plan that doesn't almost kill me." Lyra let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "You're alive, barely," he said. But alive. Hours later, the city floated in quiet. Its wounds were many, but it stood. For the first time, Lyra walked among the human workers without looking down on them. When she passed Ethan in the docking bay, she stopped. "You changed our fate today," she said. He shook his head. "No, you did. You listened." As he walked away, Lyra glanced out at the stars. She didn't see any shadows, but she knew they were still out there, watching, waiting, and now, maybe, thinking twice about what it meant to hunt humans far beyond. The edge of the system, in the dark between stars, another shape stirred, larger than the Vrakon, colder, older, and it turned its attention toward Earth.